Through that, I learned how to make duct tape wallets, Bible covers, flowers, folders, shirts, anything you could think of. We were making it out of tape. We even made Andy Goolsby a tuxedo shirt one time. But the bigger picture, outside of making things with little things that you find in your house, is for us to pay attention to the things that are right in front of us, because everything is useful. It doesn't take much. We don't need to have this dated perspective of when we need to serve God once we get to a certain level. God wants us to start right now. God will always start with where we are, with what we are, with who we are, and with what we have today. Number 4, the last thing is, when we say yes to God's plan, we need to be prepared to be blown away by what happens. When we say yes to God's plan, we need to be prepared to be blown away by what happens. God will blow us away with the results. God is a God who wants to rock our world. He wants to totally blow us away, completely shatter the stereotypes about who God is and what He can do. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets of broken pieces of bread and fish. This only happened because they were willing to give up their fish and their bread in the first place. They didn't have to. They could have chosen to play it safe, to be selfish with their own food. They could have chosen to sit and eat it themselves. But that would have been a very sad and a very short story. We all have that choice too. We can choose to keep the things that we have. We can choose not to share the hope that's inside of us. But that makes our story very short, very selfish, and very sad. God wants to paint a different picture. He wants to use us in ways so that we can completely trust Him. It's crazy and it's unpredictable, but it's totally, completely abundant. Have you ever thought about why there were 12 baskets left over? I think it's because each of those disciples had to pick up one of those baskets and take it home and plop it down on the living room table and say, "Here, honey, we have food for the next several days." I was thinking, how can I communicate this in our world today? And it's like if you go to the movies. You go to the movies with your buddy and your buddy says, "I'm going to go to the restroom. Why don't you go get the popcorn?" And you get a little bummed because you only have $40 in your pocket. And you know a small popcorn costs $38.50. So you walk up and you give the guy the money behind the counter and you look at his name tag and it says Jesus. And as soon as you hand over that money, you hear a backup alarm from a truck and the truck backs up right next to you. The dump bed raises and there's so much popcorn that you have to swim back to your seat. You're blown away by how much there is. And then when you get home and you open the door, you pull that front door open and popcorn just rolls out. And your family's asking you, "Who gave you all this popcorn?" And you say, "Jesus did." The reality is that's exactly what happened on this day. The disciples had no explanation for it. They couldn't figure it out. They said yes to God with a very small lunch. And God totally blew them away. That's what can happen in our lives today. That's what can happen when we trust God. It's crazy, but it can happen. If we trust God, if we truly, truly trust God, then we just have to step back and look because the abundance is going to be there. God is standing ready to blow us away. Paul is praying here and he says, "Now to Him, to God, who can do immeasurably more than I can ask or imagine." God can do so much more than our little brains can possibly fathom. That's the kind of God He is. That's the kind of God who is ready to rock our world. I believe that these are 4 lessons that this miracle can teach us. Is to see the hungry that surround us, to have compassion on them, to be willing to serve, and to be ready to start today with what we have. And then when we say yes to God, we're blown away. But you might be saying, after all of that, what's next? What's my next step? And the first thing I want to challenge you with is, number one, let God fulfill your deep hunger. If you're living the world's way, you know that you're spiritually hungry. Maybe it's because a spouse has left the house and you feel rejected. Maybe it's because of relationships that you've had, that you've invested so much in another person and they've betrayed you and you feel empty. Maybe you're trying to fill that need. You're trying to fill that hole with different things. You're doing people-pleasing things. So whatever your friends want to do, you try to do it to please them so that you be accepted. You're trying different experiments and you're trying to hold with parties and all sorts of things that the world offers. You know that if you walk away from it for any length of time, you're not satisfied. And you know that the only thing that's going to satisfy you is your deep hunger. The only thing that's going to satisfy that deep hunger is a relationship with God, the one that created you, the one who wired you to be who you are in the first place. You let God fill that deep hunger. And next, you've heard me use the term stumbler in the past weeks. If somebody's a stumbler, they're not a seeker. They've already stepped across that line and they've said yes to God, but they're not completely sold out to God's way or God's plan. If you're right here in the middle, you're in a tough spot. You've got a lot of stress in your life. You've got too much of God to enjoy your worldly ways, and you've got too much of the world to enjoy godly ways. So what happens is you really don't enjoy anything. You've got no real deep nourishment because you've never really fully said yes to God. You've never said, I want to give all this stuff up. I don't want to fill my hunger with all those things that the world teaches. I want to say yes to you, and I want to be sold out to you. I challenge you to let God fulfill that deep spiritual hunger. And maybe you are sold out. Maybe you stepped across the line and you're living God's way the best that you can. Then this next step is for you. That you would let God use you to feed others. Let God use you to feed others. On that day on the hill, Jesus prayed to God and He broke the bread and He broke the fish. And He fed more than 5,000 people. He fed their spiritual needs by teaching them. And He fed their physical needs by feeding them. You can do the same thing. Surrounding this valley are thousands and thousands of people. God wants to use you. God wants to use Pleasant Hill Baptist Church to feed those people. If you would be willing to say yes to God, willing to let God use you to feed those thousands around us, we would have to plan extra worship services here. 1 or 2 just wouldn't do it. We'd have to have 5, 10, 15 worship services on a weekend because we'd be feeding the needs of those who came in. Those who came in wanting a relationship with the one who created them. I challenge you, if that's where you are, let God use you to feed those people that surround you. You may think you're asking the impossible. I can't do it. But here's my last thought. I would never ask you to do something that was impossible. God would never ask you to do something that was impossible. What we're talking about right now is doing the possible. He only asks that you would do the possible and that you would let God do the impossible. When we trust Him, He takes us on a ride that's absolutely incredible. Would you pray with me? Dear Jesus, thank you once again for bringing us here. Thank you for your word, which I believe speaks to our heart today. Lord, I pray for the people in this church that are legitimately seeking you. They want to know the truth. And Lord, I pray that you would talk to them in a real way. If they're interested in making a decision to fill their needs with a relationship with you, would you just prompt their hearts to say yes right now?